switch to Texas A&M baseball, coming off of a very, very entertaining sweep of South Carolina over the weekend. I personally have not had more fun as a baseball fan watching them Thursday through Saturday. Obviously, Saturday's epic, historical, I don't know what else you can say about it, comeback after being down 12-2, winning 15-12 with consecutive grand slams. First time that's ever happened, I think, in baseball history. I was getting a little mixed up with that because I do know that for A&M, it's since 1974 that they've had that large of a comeback, I believe.
Yeah.
What was the stat?
Since at least 1974. So I think that's as far back as the records go.
Yeah, exactly. As far back as you can say, well, that's when they started taking these stats.
Yeah.
But starting, and you know, it's kind of interesting. Me and Will and Robert Barons were talking about this last week, that the biggest thing that was standing in A&M's way was confidence and pitching. That was it. I mean, I honestly thought you go in the season, this was the consensus preseason number one team. And the reason for that was your starting pitching and your elite batting lineup, starting with Jace Levelette, who is obviously still considered as the number one prospect, as Baseball America basically said today, that he's still contending for that number one spot after improvement. And you go down the list from Caden Sorrell to Wyatt Hensler, to pretty much every transfer portal addition. This was an elite lineup that when they started off so poorly, you just looked at it confused. I mean, it's like, you have predominant strengths like that. You should be able to get through games, especially in SC play. You should be able to at least win series based on offense, even if the pitching is not contributing at a high level. And I think there were moments where, Ryan Prager, for example, would have great outings, and then Justin Lampkin would have average outings. Then Miles Patton would have good to average to poor outings, and the offense just would never give enough. And you were coming out of losses where you looked at that and went, if they just scored 8 runs, this record would be completely different. And after being shut up 10-0, being held hitless against Tennessee, I saw something the other day that, we went into Saturday's doubleheader against Tennessee kind of thinking, okay, this team is officially either quit or it's just not going to get better. And I think it was Terrence Keel's immaculate catch that saved a home run when tied 2-2 that completely turned around this season. For now, we have a lot of games left and we have very tough series left. But that could have been the turning point, because after that, this team scored, I believe it was 26 runs and completely destroyed the then number one ranked team in the country. And I mean, destroyed them to the point where I believe Ben Royo hit a home run in game 2 and Wyatt Hensler as well, where it was just with ease. It was just with pure swagger and just fun. They were just having fun. They were just beating the living crap out of this very talented championship contending team. And we're all sitting there going, what is this? What is going on here? What happened? Is this real? Is this a fluke? Are we going to go in the week and they're going to struggle against a mid-major, and then we're going to go in against South Carolina and they're just going to get swept? That didn't happen. You go into, I believe it was Tuesday against Sam Houston on the road, didn't even hit a home run. I believe they scored 12 runs. I can't remember the score exactly, but this team started to live up to their preseason potential finally. And then we go into Thursday, where I will say this: Weston Moss is one of my favorite players to ever come through that program right now, based on just his personality alone, because this was a game where A&M started out hot. South Carolina came back. They got enough from Prager, I believe, but he's been struggling as of late. Miles Patton came in with a 7-7 tie. And basically, I would say, outside of Caden Sorrell's walk-off, that was the reason A&M got off to such a good start and continued going into game 2, which was a shutout 17-0 run roll win. And then obviously we go into the final game of the series. You go into game 3s all the time, and it's really like, what kind of pitching are we going to get today? Are we going to get kind of lazy? Oh, we won the series, whatever. Well, Miles Patton was very good for, I would say, about 3 innings, maybe 4. Top of the 5th, it just all went to hell. And you started to think, okay, is this the type of A&M team that we're going to see the rest of the season? Is that they win a series and then it's kind of like, okay, do we have to give that much after? I would say I don't think that's the case, but at the same time, you finally saw the perseverance that we all expected. That you are down, South Carolina just ramped the score up. It was 12-2. Blake Binderup hit. I think it was a 2-run home run, and then a couple more runs in the seventh. And then after that, you have 12th man representative Hayden Schott walking up to the plate with bases loaded, looking completely relaxed. And I mean, I honestly saw this as they can't do this. This isn't going to happen. This is a fairy tale, right? It's like they got close enough, but hits just again with ease, just hits a home run, just just having fun. The guy's celebrating already. He knows that they're going to win this game. It's 12-11. Again, you're thinking, no, they're going to get 3 outs, right? It's going to happen. Walk me through, instead of me hogging all the time right now, walk me through kind of their mental aspect going into, I believe the seventh when they're down 12-7. What do you think was just the turnaround there? What do you really attribute this to, like Michael Early's influence, or is this purely this team figuring out we are this good, we know what we can do, this is something we can achieve, and we can continue not to pull out these type of wins, but continue to play like this, competitive, and giving ourselves a chance to win throughout the rest of SC play?
Yeah, I think it's kind of a compounding effect of, okay, you not just sweep the doubleheader against Tennessee, but you kill them in the process. You do what you did against South Carolina after I think you had 14 straight retired batters in game 1, and the game ended the way it did. And then you win 17-0 game 2. I mean, just the confidence has to continue to build, and there are tangible reasons behind why it's happening. You insert Caden Sorrell, who's been out for much of the season with a hamstring injury. He's immediately amazing. Bear Harrison has just absolutely caught fire. I mean, you've got guys that are just really starting to – I think that middle of the lineup was such a hole for A&M, and they moved Keel to the leadoff spot probably 7 or 8 games ago, and that's panned out as well. And now you go 1 through 6, and that lineup looks so much more lethal than it did 2 weeks ago. And so I think it was probably more of a building confidence thing where you probably don't have that confidence, you don't have that belief if you don't do what you did at Tennessee, if you don't do what you did in game 1 and game 2. And you could talk about so many guys that proved to be heroes. I mean, even George in game 1 with the home run that he robbed. You talk about Keel, what he did against Tennessee. Just so many different guys showing up, and then that 9th inning, it really was a collaborative deal where it wasn't just a couple guys. They batted around in that inning. The inning started with Kent getting a single, and it ended with him hitting the grand slam. And so it kind of took everybody. And yeah, I think you have to give credit to the coaching. I mean, I think this season has been quite the learning experience for Michael Early. I think there were some real growing pains early on in the season, some questionable decisions, some bad body language. You'd hear him on an interview and you're like, man, did a puppy just die? Or like, what is going on here? Like, hey, as a head coach, you probably shouldn't sound like that on an interview. And I remember that Cal Poly series being there. I think it was the Cal Poly series where I was just like, man, the body language is terrible with this team. They look miserable out there. They look like none of them are friends. They look unhappy, and you could just feel it. It was so different than the year before where it was just so much collective connected tissue, right? Mm-hmm. And then, yeah, just you didn't get that sense early on in the year. And and they kind of won their first 5 games, and they're beating up some bad teams. But you kind of looked and said, well, Ryan Prager's awesome, and Miles Patton had started really well. Lampkin had a fairly decent start to the season. But the question was kind of like, well, what's going to happen once those guys start to fade? And because the defense is a real issue and the offense is kind of underwhelming. And so once those issues, or once their pitching was not as good as it was to start the year, that's when you started to see the real cracks. And then that's when you really started to see the whole chemistry thing and the I guess the spirit of the team kind of crack. But I think at Tennessee, I think there was almost this back against the wall mixed with the nothing to lose mentality. Like, hey, this is the number 1 team in the country. Lost to them in the championship last year. 1-9 in conference play. Got to win and got to play free because this is it kind of thing. This is the chance to turn it around. And that was also the series where you really felt that the team started to have fun again. They had the new golden putter. They obviously this past weekend they introduced the green jacket with the Masters.
Caused a lot of controversy with Texas fans, yeah.
Of course. And so it kind of started this new like fun thing, and like you can point back to previous years, the Pringles and the good hats and all the antics that you've seen from this team, and it just felt like they finally had their new thing. They started with Rattling Bog to begin the year. They're still doing it, obviously, but it kind of felt last year. What was going to be the thing this year? And now they found it. And I just think, you combine confidence, you combine the positive energy with, having Sorrell and Harrison playing the way that they're playing. So many things at play. And then really maybe the biggest thing is Caden Kent is just a grand slamming clutch machine where if he's at the plate with the bases loaded, you might have to treat him like Barry Bonds and just intentionally walk him.
Yeah. I mean, he's done it now. That's it. That was his second 9th inning grand slam in the last 2 years. I mean, that's the thing. Like you look at that and you think Caden Kent, son of Jeff Kent. I just can't get over how that I mean, literally that he's going to get married one day and he's going to have to put son of Jeff Kent like next to it. It's just like trademark now, but he's been the bright spot. And I'm glad you mentioned, obviously, Bear Harrison. We could spend an entire show, I think, talking about this young man's ascendance. And you got to remember, they picked up two catchers in the transfer portal, knowing, look, we gotta find out who our guy is. And he quickly, I think, really the start of SEC play, even when they were struggling, he was really one of the main bright spots. And then Caden Kent really started playing well, and especially defensively. He made some great plays on defense against South Carolina. But these are always going to be the keys, is that when you have to have specific players step up consistently, because we mentioned Jace Levelette, obviously, who's the biggest name on this team outside of Wyatt Hensler, he's still the, I think, active home run leader, I believe. But when he's not performing consistently, you need a handful of guys to step up. And I think Ken had, I believe, 4 hits in Game 3 on Saturday. And I would also mention pitching wise, I do know that credit to Michael Early for mentioning that Brad Rudis and Caden McCoy kept that team clean to give them a chance to win that game. And I mean, that was kind of massive. You had a bullpen that had been struggling. They literally couldn't put a guy in that wouldn't allow a run. And you put in Brad Rudis, who's been known throughout his career of allowing big home runs, and he kept them clean. And it's like, that's a team effort that you need to see the rest of the season, because we're coming up with number 2 Arkansas, I believe. I think Texas is number 1 now. Was that number 2 this weekend? Obviously in Fayetteville, that's going to be a very, very tough series. But I'm going to be honest, the way this team is playing right now, I wouldn't doubt that they could win 1 or 2 games there. I just don't right now. I mean, 2 weeks ago, no, I would have said no chance, they're going to get swept. But after Arkansas, obviously you're going to face Jim Schlossnagle in Texas. That is going to be widely publicized. I don't know if I'm ready for that yet, but we will be ready for that. And if you go into that with a series win, or I'm going to be honest, even one win against Arkansas, you still have a little momentum. You would hope that one win, if that's the case, would come in the final day of the weekend. But look, it's just they're having fun again. It's fun to cover. It's fun to watch this team because it was very, very, very ugly for the first 2 months, and I'm just grateful for that. To be honest, as somebody who gets paid to cover this team, it's like they're actually trying. They're doing what we all expected, and they're doing it in a way where they're having fun, and that's all really that matters.